These are 10 of the most terrifying individuals who betrayed their own family by taking their lives, aka family annihilators. Anthony Todt, the Celebration Delusion. Celebration, Florida, is a master plan community designed to look like the picture-perfect image of suburban tranquility. Think Stepford Wives, if you will. But in January 2020, that illusion was shattered when authorities entered the home of physical therapist Anthony Todt. Now inside, they discovered the remains of his wife, Megan, their 3 young children, and even the family dog. Like, what did the dog do? Anthony's life had been spiraling out of control due to immense hidden financial distress and multiple federal investigations into his business practices. Instead of facing the consequences, Anthony developed a deeply disturbing delusion, convincing himself that his family needed to be, quote unquote, saved from the upcoming hardships. So he took the lives of his entire household over the course of several days, continuing to live inside the residence with them until police arrived to execute a federal warrant. In 2022, a jury found him guilty on all counts, and the judge described him as a destroyer of worlds. James Ruppert, the Easter Sunday Massacre. So we go back to Easter Sunday. Let's go back all the way back to 1975. This is in Hamilton, Ohio. This is a historic case that remains one of the most devastating single-day domestic tragedies in American history. James Ruppert was a 29-year-old unaccomplished artist who lived in his mother's home, deeply resentful of his older brother's successful career and his family life as well. Now, on Easter Day, his brother, sister-in-law, and their 8 children, ranging in age from 4 to 17, gathered at the mother's house for a family celebration. Consumed by a toxic mixture of jealousy, financial frustration over an inheritance, and severe psychological deterioration, Ruppert waited until the whole family was gathered in the kitchen. Now, in a matter of minutes, he executed a ruthless, systematic assault, taking the lives of all 11 family members present, including his very own mother. He then very calmly just called the police to report the event. He was handed 11 consecutive life sentences. Robert William Fisher, the Scottsdale explosion. So in April of 2001, a thunderous explosion rocked a very quiet neighborhood in Scottsdale, Arizona, completely leveling a suburban family home. Emergency crews rushing into the burning ruins expected to find, a tragic accident, of course, right? But forensic teams quickly realized the fire was deliberately set to mask a far more sinister crime. Inside the debris lay the remains of Mary Fisher and her 2 young children, all of whom had sustained fatal injuries before the natural gas line was intentionally severed. The prime suspect was the father, Robert William Fisher, a highly volatile, controlling outdoorsman who was facing an impending divorce that he simply refused to accept. Fisher vanished into thin air using his wife's vehicle, which was later found abandoned in a remote forest alongside the family dog. Fisher was placed on the FBI's 10 most wanted list, turning into a ghost that has eluded international law enforcement for over 2 decades. Chris Watts, the most disturbing case in modern history. This chilling list begins in Frederick, Colorado, with a modern tragedy that completely captured the attention of the global public in August of 2018. Shanann Watts, an expectant mother, suddenly vanished along with her 2 young daughters, Bella and Celeste, or better known as Cece. Her husband, Chris Watts, stood on his front porch and gave an emotional television interview pleading for his family's safe return. His public display of worry lasted less than 48 hours. Under intense police questioning and a failed polygraph examination, his carefully constructed story completely crumbled. Chris had been leading a double life, pursuing an affair with a coworker, and wanted a completely fresh start, free of his marital and parental responsibilities. In a single morning, he took the lives of his wife and his children inside their home, disposing of them at a remote oil site where he worked in the most heartless way. He eventually pleaded guilty to avoid ultimate penalties and is currently serving multiple life sentences with absolutely no chance of parole. It wasn't even until he was in prison for months did he finally admit to taking the lives of his daughters. Chris Watts is as remorseless as they come. Stephen Benson, the inheritance trap. So in July of 1985, a prominent tobacco heiress named Margaret Benson and her family stepped out of their luxury home in Naples, Florida to inspect a new family vehicle. So as Margaret, her son Bird, and her grandson entered the vehicle, a massive, catastrophic explosion tore through the driveway, followed immediately by a second blast. Margaret and Bird lost their lives instantly, while the grandson miraculously survived, but with severe injuries. Investigators quickly turned their attention to the oldest son, Stephen Benson, who had conveniently, stepped out of the vehicle just moments before the blast to check a security gate. Detectives discovered that Stephen had been systematically embezzling millions of dollars from his mother's massive estate and realized he was about to be completely cut out of the family will. To secure his multi-million-dollar inheritance, he had spent weeks secretly purchasing component materials to construct the devices. He was convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison. Marcus Wesson, the Fresno cult father. So back in 2004, a quiet residential street in Fresno, California, became the scene of one of the most complex and deeply disturbing standoffs in law enforcement history. Marcus Wesson was a highly controlling patriarch who ruled his large household with absolute psychological manipulation, isolating his family completely from the outside world. Wesson had indoctrinated his family into a rigid, fringe belief system where he held total authority over life and death. When local authorities arrived at the home to assist with a domestic child custody dispute, Wesson barricaded himself inside, refusing to yield his absolute control to the legal system. He enacted a horrific final directive that he had prepared his family for over several years. By the time tactical teams breached the residence, 9 individuals ranging from young adults to infants had lost their lives. Wesson was convicted on 9 counts of first-degree murder and sentenced to the ultimate penalty. Mark hacking the web of lies. So back in July of 2004, the community of Salt Lake City in Utah rallied around a young husband named Mark Hacking, who reported that his pregnant wife, Lori, had gone, for an early morning jog and just simply never returned. Hundreds of volunteers combed local parks while Mark gave very tearful, public statements begging for information and her return. But, as investigators looked into the couple's background, they uncovered a really massive, staggering web of deception. Mark had lied to his wife, he lied to his family, and his entire community for years, literally. He wasn't a college graduate like he claimed he was, and he had never been accepted into medical school in North Carolina like he claimed he did. And despite organizing a massive moving sale for their upcoming relocation, Lori had discovered the truth just days prior after calling the university directly. Facing the absolute collapse of his fabricated identity, Mark actually took his wife's life while she was asleep. He eventually confessed to his brothers, and he was, thankfully, sentenced to life in prison. David Brom, murder over music. Our 8th case takes us to a devastating family tragedy that unfolded in Minnesota in February back of 1988, proving that immense malice can reside within a teenage mind. 16-year-old David Brom engaged in a fierce, escalating argument with his father over just the type of music he was allowed to listen to and his personal lifestyle choices. The conflict, however, extended far beyond a typical, teenage parent disagreement. He decided to entirely eliminate his household to seize absolute control of his own life and access whatever family funds he could basically secure. In a single evening, he systematically took the lives of his father, his mother, his older sister, and his 11-year-old brother inside their home. He then went to school the very next day like nothing happened, interacting with peers as if nothing had occurred the night before. He was ultimately convicted on 4 counts of first-degree murder and handed consecutive life terms. William Parente, the Suite 1407 tragedy. In April of 2009, staff at a luxury hotel in Albany, New York, entered Suite 1407 after a guest family failed to check out on time. Inside the quiet room, they made a horrifying discovery. A prominent, highly successful New York real estate attorney named William Parente had turned on his wife and his 2 daughters, ages 11 and 19. Parente had built an image of immense wealth and prestige, but Behind the scenes, he was facing total financial ruin. He had been operating a massive multi-million-dollar fraudulent investment scheme that was actively collapsing, and he knew exposure was imminent. Unable to face the public humiliation and the loss of his high society status, Parente chose to execute his entire family inside the hotel room before taking his own life. The tragedy left their affluent community paralyzed, demonstrating how far an individual will go to protect a false image of success. Xavier Dupont de Ligonnès, the French fugitive. Our final case is one of Europe's most infamous and chilling mysteries. In April 2011, authorities in Nantes, France grew concerned after a prominent aristocrat family suddenly just went silent, leaving a note on their door claiming they had been abruptly relocated to the United States under a witness protection program. An extensive search of the property led to a terrace where police uncovered the carefully concealed remains of Agnes Dupont and her 4 children ranging in age from 13 to 21 and their 2 family dogs. The patriarch, Xavier, was nowhere to be found. Investigators discovered Xavier was deeply in debt, having completely drained his family's noble inheritance while trying to maintain a luxury lifestyle. He spent days methodically closing bank accounts, deleting digital trails, and, packing the home before vanishing into the south of France. Now, despite thousands of reported sightings across the globe, Xavier remains one of international justice's most elusive fugitives. So if you see something, say something. 10 households, a trail of absolute devastation left behind by the very individuals who promised to provide protection. These cases serve as a somber reminder that the deepest darkness can sometimes grow completely undetected right within our own homes.